Princess Lyra of the Cerulean Imperium, ruler of 1,000 suns, master of legions that could shatter galaxies. Her word was law, her gaze a command. Yet standing before her, Commander Thorn of the human fleet Terra remained infuriatingly unimpressed. He just stood there, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He hadn't bowed. He hadn't even flinched when her psionic guard drew their energy blades. For the first time in her centuries-long life, Lyra was utterly ignored. And it drove her insane. She'd expected humanity to be primitive. A fledgling species barely reaching for the stars, ripe for assimilation into her glorious imperium. Thorn was supposed to be their representative, a simple soldier easily swayed by displays of power. Instead, he met her grand proclamations with a dry, almost bored, "Is that all?" He questioned her tactics, pointed out flaws in her grand strategies, and even had the audacity to suggest improvements. The nerve! The Cerulean Council was scandalized. They demanded she make an example of him to crush this insignificant human in his pathetic fleet. But Lyra found herself hesitating. Thorn wasn't disrespectful, not really. He was just direct. He saw her not as a divine ruler, but as a commander, an equal. He treated their negotiations not as a surrender, but as a strategic meeting. He spoke of logistics, supply lines, and troop morale. Things the Council, lost in their ancient traditions and sense of superiority, had long since forgotten. He saw the Imperium not as a perfect, shining beacon, but as a machine, a powerful one, yes, but one with gears that could grind and parts that could break. Her frustration grew with each interaction. She assigned him the most grueling tasks, the most impossible missions, from quelling rebellions on volcanic moons to navigating treacherous asteroid fields that had claimed Cerulean flagships. She expected him to fail, to come crawling back, begging for her mercy. But each time he and his human crew succeeded. They didn't use overwhelming force like her generals. They used ingenuity, adaptability, and a stubborn refusal to give up that Lyra found both infuriating and fascinating. They jury-rigged their ships, reprogrammed Cerulean tech on the fly, and relied on something she hadn't seen in her own legions for a long time: trust. Thorn trusted his people, and they, in turn, would follow him into the heart of a supernova. The turning point came during the Cathar invasion. These insectoid aliens were a plague, a swarm that consumed entire worlds. The Imperial Council saw it as a minor border dispute, a nuisance to be swatted away. But Thorn saw the truth. He brought Lyra data, projections, showing how the Cathar weren't just raiding. They were migrating, fleeing something worse. His analysis predicted their path would lead them straight to the Cerulean core worlds, including the throne world itself. The Council laughed. A human predicting the downfall of an empire that had stood for 10,000 years? Preposterous. They accused Thorn of fear-mongering, of trying to manipulate the princess for humanity's gain. They ordered Lyra to ignore him and focus on ceremonial duties. But Thorn's logic was undeniable. The numbers didn't lie. For the first time, Lyra felt a cold dread that had nothing to do with her authority being questioned. It was the fear of true oblivion. She decided to trust him. Secretly, she diverted resources to Thorn's fleet, giving him command of a joint human-Cerulean task force. They went to the border not to fight the Cathar head-on, but to understand them. Thorn's strategy was radical. He didn't want to exterminate them, he wanted to know what they were running from. While her own generals plotted grand, glorious battles that would cost millions of lives, Thorn was sending out scout ships and science vessels. It was during one of these scouting missions that the assassination attempt happened. It wasn't the Cathar who struck. It was Ceruleans. Members of her own royal guard, loyal to the old ways, loyal to the Council, ambushed her shuttle. They saw her alliance with Thorn as a betrayal, a pollution of their pure lineage. Her personal psionic guards were elite, but they were outnumbered. The shuttle was torn apart, alarms blaring, its hull breached. Just as a royal guardsman raised his blade for the final blow, Thorn's ship, the Defiant, materialized out of nowhere. It wasn't a graceful warp jump, it was a brutal, reckless emergency maneuver that must have pushed his ship's reactor to the breaking point. Marines in rugged, practical armor stormed the shuttle, their pulse rifles firing with disciplined precision. Thorn himself was the first one through the breach. He didn't hesitate. He put himself between Lyra and her assassins, his body a shield. He took a searing blast from an energy pistol to his shoulder, an injury that would have vaporized a lesser man, but he didn't even stumble. He just fired back, his expression a cold fury she had never seen before. In the aftermath, as the medics tended to his wound, he looked at her not with reverence or fear, but with concern. "Are you all right, Princess?" he asked, his voice strained. In that moment, she saw it all. His loyalty wasn't to her title or her power. It was to her, to the person he had come to know. And she realized her own feelings ran deeper than mere fascination. She had come to rely on him, to respect him, to trust him. More than she trusted her own counsel. The information they recovered from the assassins confirmed their worst fears. The council had orchestrated the attack. They would rather see her dead than see the Imperium change. And the Cathar? Thorn was right. They were fleeing a void wraith, a creature of dark energy that consumed suns, and it was heading right for them. Lyra returned to the throne world not as a questioning princess, but as a queen ready for war. She stood before the assembled council, Thorn at her side, his arm in a sling, a living symbol of their betrayal. She presented the evidence of their treachery, of the coming apocalypse they had willfully ignored. They denied it all, of course, branding her a heretic, a human sympathizer. They called for her arrest. But something had shifted. The younger members of the court, the junior officers in the military, they had seen Thorn's successes. They had heard the reports from the Joint Task Force. They had seen the weakness and stagnation of the old guard. When the council's loyalists moved to seize her, it was Cerulean soldiers who raised their weapons to defend their princess, standing shoulder to shoulder with Thorn's human marines. Lyra looked at the shocked faces of the old council members and gave her final command. "The Imperium you knew is dead," she declared, her voice ringing with newfound power. "It was old, corrupt, and blind. We will build something new in its place, not an empire of masters and subjects, but an alliance of equals, a federation, and humanity will be its founding partner." It was a declaration of civil war, the Imperium fractured. Worlds loyal to the old council seceded, preparing for a long and bitter conflict, but many more rallied to her and Thorn. They saw hope, a future that wasn't bound by suffocating tradition. The battle against the Void Wraith was the first test of this new alliance. Cerulean psionics and human ingenuity, ancient power and modern tactics side by side. Lyra and Thorn commanded the fleets from the bridge of the Defiant. It was a desperate, brutal fight that pushed them all to the edge. But they held the line. They didn't just save the galaxy, they forged a new one in the fires of that battle. A galaxy where a princess and a commander could stand together, not as ruler and subject, but as partners ready to face whatever came next. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into epic science fiction tales. See you next time.